Dear sirs, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. One single generation gives up freedom, and we lose it forever.
When we talk about freedom of speech, we're talking about a right that has been granted, at first in England and later in the USA and the countries that realized it was necessary to exalt this kind of value. It was the English who strengthened this idea, and the Americans who actually put them into practice. The concept of English freedom of expression crossed the Atlantic at the time of the Enlightenment for the United States, for the colonies, and it was an integral part of the thinking that formed, in the American Revolution, the American founding myth. In the United States, the belief in freedom of expression is very deep. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence of the United States, said that our freedom stems from our freedom of expression. Many people have suffered from the idea that some thoughts did not deserve disclosure, and that suffering comes from antiquity. Outside the Western world, where the tradition of democracy is virtually non-existent, and freedom of expression is a distant idea, this alliance took place through the old means of state censorship. China has implemented a system known as the Great Firule of China. Websites such as YouTube, Twitter, Wikipedia, Facebook, and Google are blocked for citizens who use government monitors communications system.
它的直播内容都会先由系统做一系列的预处理，包括延时，包括截图出帧，然后根据图谱识别，它会做一个等级的区分，系统标示为微度比较高的，那这种重点监控。
In Venezuela, Hugo Chavez wins the 1999 election with 56% of the vote. His first steps are to convene a new constituent assembly, where he changes the name of the country to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and establishes unlimited re-election. In 2013, Chavez dies of cancer, spending 14 years in power. Then Maduro, its vice president, takes power. In the following election, Maduro, like Chavez, is elected with many complaints of fraud and imprisonment of opponents. The shortage of food, which had already been happening with Chavez, worsens with Maduro. People start to eat garbage and even their own dogs. Soon, people begin to attempt mass emigration, going to neighboring countries like Colombia and Brazil.
All levels of income are better off than they were in 1979. But what the honourable member is saying is that he would rather the poor were poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That way you will never create the wealth for better social services as we have. And what a policy! Yes, he would rather have the poor poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That is the liberal policy.
Diante de toda a nação, nesse dia, como um dia que o povo começou a se libertar do socialismo, se libertar da inversão de valores, do gigantismo estatal e do politicamente correto.
With the son of the Brazilian president, who's a real maverick, really second only to Trump, promoting nationalism, God, family, country. And of course, they tried to murder him, they stabbed him, but he's won the presidency, and he's really caused a rebirth in Brazil. And his son is here at SEATO.
Got attacked during the elections period, election time. Much of the press, they don't say that this step was made by a former member of the Socialism and Liberty Party in Brazil. So, future prosperity. We are only in the first year under a Bolsonaro government in Brazil, and we reduced in 20%, the first year, we reduced in 20% the number of the murders. We are not in a recession anymore. Brazil, we grew up a little bit more than 1% last year, and also generate a little bit more than 1 million jobs. So this is the right way, and I think if we keep going, we will never go back anymore to a socialist system.
And thanks for your support of Israel, too, and moving the embassy.
When we had Dilma Rousseff and Lula da Silva in Brazil as presidents, they were giving our money from our public bank called BNDES to rebuild a port in Cuba, to build subway in Venezuela, and they never pay us back. So this is socialism. If you want to try Bernie Sanders, you don't even have to imagine about the facts. Look to Brazil, look to Venezuela where they are going. And don't think that this is something far away from your reality. Because during the 90s, if you talk to any Venezuelan, that Venezuela would have a dictatorship in this way that they are having with Maduro, no one would believe in that. So please vote for Trump.
O resultado da Argentina?
Lamento. Eu não tenho bola de cristal, mas eu acho que a Argentina escolheu mal, né?
Y vuelvo a repetir, acá de lo que se trata para muchos de esos empresarios es de ganar menos, no de perder. Bueno, muchachos, les tocó la hora de ganar menos. Y así lo voy a hacer respetar. Así que...
Yo no soy millonario, yo invertí todo acá. ¿Qué quiere? ¿Que venda mi auto? No hay ningún problema para pagarle a ellos. De esta casa no se van a ir, ninguno sin cobrar algo. Pero si no puedo, ¿qué voy a hacer? Y lamentablemente voy a tener que cerrarla. Lamentablemente voy a tener que cerrarla dentro de 2 meses.
¿Vos crees que se va? ¿Vos crees que no vas a poder abrir?
Muy difícil. Poder mantener la fuente, los ingresos, muy difícil.
Señor presidente, hubo una moción por parte de la sociedad para que la política se bajara los sueldos. ¿Cuál es su opinión al respecto?
No lo voy a hacer. No lo voy a hacer porque eso es un acto de populismo que en verdad no resuelve el problema.
The one I'm going to tell you, I told to General Secretary Gorbachev, and he laughed. The story was an American and a Russian arguing about their two countries, and the American said, look, in my country, I can walk into the Oval Office, I can pound the president's desk and say, Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running our country. And the Russian said, I can do that. The American said, you can? He says, yes. I can go into the Kremlin, to the General Secretary's office, pound his desk and say, Mr. General Secretary, I don't like the way President Reagan's running his country.
Today to talk about our relationship with China and several new measures to protect American security and prosperity. China's pattern of misconduct is well known. For decades, they've ripped off the United States like no one has ever done before. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year were lost dealing with China, especially over the years during the prior administration. China raided our factories, offshored our jobs, gutted our industries, stole our intellectual property, and violated their commitments under the World Trade Organization. To make matters worse, they are considered a developing nation, getting all sorts of benefits that others, including the United States, are not entitled to. but I have never solely blamed China for this. They were able to get away with the theft like no one was able to get away with before because of past politicians and, frankly, past presidents. But unlike those who came before, my administration negotiated and fought for what was right. It's called fair and reciprocal treatment. China has also unlawfully claimed territory in the Pacific Ocean, threatening freedom of navigation and international trade. And they broke their word to the world on ensuring the autonomy of Hong Kong. The United States wants an open and constructive relationship with China, but achieving that relationship requires us to vigorously defend our national interests. The Chinese government has continually violated its promises to us and so many other nations. These plain facts cannot be overlooked or swept aside. The world is now suffering as a result of the malfeasance of the Chinese government.
In those debates, you landed haymakers on Joe Biden. I mean, his teeth were like chiclets all over the stage, and now I believe you that you're fully supportive of him. How does that transition happen? How do you go from being such a passionate opponent on such bedrock principles for you, and now you guys seem to be pals?
It was a debate.
I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological.
Vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris's husband is a partner at DLA Piper. That's a global law firm that works closely with the Chinese Communist Party. If Harris is elected VP, the closeness of this company to White House officials raises a few questions about potential conflict of interest. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on that.
According to its website, DLA Piper is a global law firm with lawyers in more than 40 countries. Kamala Harris's husband, Douglas Emhoff, has been partners with DLA Piper since 2017. That's according to his bio page on the company's website. The firm gives business advice to private companies and has also consulted Chinese state-owned businesses controlled by the Chinese Communist Party like China Merchants Group. Current and former members of the CCP also work for or partner with DLA Piper. This means that if Kamala Harris is elected Vice President of the United States, the second man of the White House would be partners with a company that does business with the Chinese regime. NTD China Affairs analyst Tang Jingyuan says Emhoff's relationship with DLA Piper could be exploited.
So in China, if you want to make money, any foreign company that wants to make money in China will have to get their hands dirty. This corruption is likely to give the CCP a lot of power to blackmail the foreign company. The CCP gets the goods on these companies and can blackmail them.
Presidential Democratic candidate Joe Biden's visibly questionable health is another concern. For this reason, Jingyuan says Harris is likely to have a strong voice on policies, especially those related to the CCP. This could potentially make it easier for the regime to influence Harris through her husband.
Her husband has very big economic interests in China, so this will inevitably lead the CCP to use such a channel. By influencing her husband and then affect Harris, the CCP can influence U.S. policies.
According to DLA Piper, Emhoff is currently on a temporary leave of absence. We contacted the Biden-Harris campaign for comment, but they didn't immediately get back to us. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Harris
administration, together with Joe Biden,